Before I get to the topic, just one quick information. There is merch under my videos if you watch on a desktop or so. I just wanted to let you know that after I had it some time, I now put in the top 12 bestsellers of my merch because quite a lot of you have gotten some pieces of my merch, and thank you for that one. And now with that, I want to show you what people are most interested in. But let's get back to the topic and the Titanic success. Away from the EU, back to old Commonwealth allies. Boris Johnson dreams of an alternative to the EU with a new free trade agreement. When Great Britain left the EU in late 2020, the United Kingdom not only suffered from the expected economic and political consequences of Brexit, but was also one of the European countries hardest hit by the corona crisis. Brexit has already caused a significant drop in trade between the EU and the UK. The trading volume fell by 23.1% compared to the first quarter of 2018, the last relatively stable quarter before Brexit and the corona crisis. At the same time, China replaced Germany as the largest foreign trade market for British exports. British imports of goods from China have increased by 66% since 2018 to the equivalent of 19.7 billion euros in the first quarter of 2021. While British imports from Germany fell to 14.5 billion euros. The fact that UK trade with countries outside the EU fell by just 0.8% over the same period suggests that most of the decrease was due to the impact of Brexit rather than the COVID-19 pandemic. The OECD is forecasting UK GDP growth of 7.2% in the short term for 2021, which would mean the strongest growth since 1941. However, this must be seen against the backdrop of the 9.8% contraction in GDP last year, the worst recession in almost 300 years. The prospects for 2022 are comparatively rosy with a forecast of 5.5% economic growth. However, the OECD warns that the UK could suffer greater economic damage in the longer term than other G7 industrialized countries. The effects of leaving the EU could exacerbate those of the pandemic. The majority of the English are still more firmly behind their Prime Minister Boris Johnson than ever. However, even those who voted in vain against Brexit, such as the Scots, Welsh or Northern Irish, now feel pressured to draw conclusions right up to the resurgence of the discussion about secession from England. Since the 2016 Brexit vote, right-wing British people have been supporting CANZUK instead of being linked to the EU. This abbreviation stands for an possible amalgamation of the UK with three of its former settler colonies, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. In the eyes of the Brexiteers, CANZUK would be synonymous with reviving Britain's ancient glory and its role in the Anglosphere, a vision that dates back to World War II and 19th century British settler colonialism. The member countries of the potential alliance share many political, economic and cultural similarities. English is their official language. Their democracies are organized according to the Westminster parliamentary system, and they are among the high-income industrialized countries. The combined foreign trade of the CANZUK countries is around 2.9 trillion euros, and in terms of their combined GDP and the ranking of the nations with the greatest total wealth, CANZUK would take third place in the world. Supporters already see CANZUK as the second most powerful geopolitical union in the world behind the EU, including Great Britain, Canada and Australia as three of the world's 15 largest economies. They believe the pact has the potential to create an alliance closely linked through trade, migration and security ties, and that CANZUK could become the fourth largest economic power after China with more than 136 million people. After all, the bloc would have the largest landmass in the world and thus a rich reservoir of natural resources. Skeptics, such as the London School of Economics economist Ian Beck, warn, however, that the new post-Brexit trade agreement with Brussels will reduce the UK's GDP by 5% over the next 15 years. CANZUK could in no way compensate for the previous EU market access. Before Brexit, the EU was England's largest trading partner, accounting for 47% of British trade, while Canada, Australia and New Zealand combined made up only 3.5%. In addition, the great distance between the CANZUK member states would significantly increase the cost of trade compared to neighboring EU states. Nobel laureate in economics Paul Krugman points out that according to the economic gravitational equation of foreign trade, the volume of trade is positively influenced by the size of the economies of the two countries, but negatively influenced by the distance between them. This implies that even if Great Britain could negotiate similar trade terms with CANZUK members as it did before as a member of the EU customs union, this would be of far less value, not least because of increased transport costs and non-tariff trade barriers. As an example, backsides the EU auto industry, where components of cars exported from England cross borders 6 or 7 times during the manufacturing process. This becomes unprofitable on very long routes, such as between the UK and Canada. British companies apparently had a more realistic assessment of the consequences of Brexit than Boris Johnson at an early stage. So they voted with their money even before the corona crisis, which hit the UK hardest of all European countries. Sharp tongues would claim they leave like rats leave the sinking ship. As early as March 2019, the Brexit vote caused British companies to increase the sum of British foreign investments in the remaining EU of the 27 by 17%, while transactions in non-EU and OECD countries remained unaffected. On the other hand, the number of EU 27 investment projects in the UK only decreased by around 9%. This suggests that the UK is more affected by the costs of economic exclusion than the rest of the EU. In addition, the uncertainty surrounding Brexit led to a decline in the market value of the international companies most affected by Brexit, as well as a decline in employment and investment. International companies expected the predominantly negative effects of Brexit, not least due to regulatory divergences, reduced labor mobility, and restricted trade access to the EU. That being said, the British share of exports to the Anglosphere economies has steadily declined since colonial times, from 36% in 1949 to 2.5% in 2017. Trade within the Anglosphere also fell from around 2/3 of total trade in the year 47 to 1/3 in 2017. Even London's most recent application from June 2021 to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP, an association of 11 Asian Pacific countries, also known as TPP-11, is met with skepticism. This is because CPTPP countries account for less than 10% of UK exports, and the UK government has agreements with most of these countries. Hence, the added net benefit would be questionable. After all, the British vision of a special relationship with the USA, according to which England forms a bridge between Europe and America, will lose its attractiveness for Washington with Brexit, or it did lose it with Brexit. Because the value of the UK to the US as a major global player will decline with the UK leaving the EU. And it did. Despite everything, CANZUK serves Boris Johnson as a future-oriented perspective, away from Europe and towards the geographically distant but faster-growing Asia-Pacific markets. If you believe Johnson, CANZUK will be a titanic success. In fact, it will hardly be able to compensate for the EU market access lost as a result of Brexit. The former colonies now have their own agendas, which do not necessarily coincide with that of the UK. And finally, the relative weight of Great Britain compared to Asian global players, such as China and India, will also decline in the medium and long term. In future trade negotiations, the Asian great powers could have the upper hand, and London could dictate no terms or conditions. I'll see you in my next video. Auf Wiedersehen.